You're listening to the T21 Podcast, brought to you by Down Syndrome Group of the Ozarks. Our mission is to bring life and wellness to families who are advocating towards a community of inclusion for individuals with Down syndrome. Hello and welcome to the T21 Podcast. My name is Chloe Jones, and joining with me, as always, is Amy Bullard.
Hey guys.
And a special guest that I'll introduce in just one moment. Here on the T21 Podcast, we explore topics that are relevant to the Down syndrome community in 21 minutes or less. And today we're going to be talking about inclusion in the classroom. But first, I wanted to invite you to like and subscribe to this podcast and share this with your family and friends. We want to get this information out to as many people as possible, and you can help us do that. Now, on to today's episode. Today we're diving into a topic that's incredibly important for families navigating the world of inclusion in the classroom. And today we have Brittany Stoeklein to talk with us and share all of your expertise. Brittany is a second grade teacher who has created an inclusive classroom where students are valued, supported, and expected to succeed. So Brittany, welcome.
Thank you.
I got to listen to a little bit of your guys' conversation before this, and I'm like, whoa, pause. We need this for the podcast. You have so much awesome things to say, so we're glad you're on. Do you want to introduce yourself a little more?
Yes, I'm Brittany Stoeklein. This will be my 19th year of teaching, and I have a background in kindergarten, first grade, and now second grade. So a lot of teaching experience.
And we were lucky enough to have her as a first grade teacher with our youngest.
Oh,
I know.
That's special.
It is special.
Well, we want to just dive right in. Inclusion starts with the belief that all children can learn. And what does that belief look like in your second grade classroom?
Well, it starts with that, knowing every child that comes to you is going to learn, and you believe that each child can learn. Now, in order for them to learn, though, I feel like it has to start with a safe environment in your classroom. They have to feel safe. If they come to you and they don't feel safe, then you are going to have an uphill battle. So it starts by having a safe classroom environment where they feel valued. And I think you have that the keys to that is by having relationships and building relationships with your students where they feel valued, where you get to know your students. And also having structure so that they know when they come into your classroom what to expect. Mm-hmm. That way, when they come in, they really can just focus on learning in your room. And they all come to you at different levels and just reaching each child at whatever level they're at. Because no two kids are the same, so it's being able to have that differentiation in your classroom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's a huge word, differentiation, because people use it in a lot of ways. And so how do you differentiate for your kids? Because I feel like that is kind of almost a key, right, to success.
Yes. And I think it's having expectations, the same expectations, but having different accommodations for different kids. Some kids may need manipulatives whenever we're doing math. Some kids may not. Having preferred seating for a child who may need to be up close to, or there's some kids that kind of prefer to be away, and that's okay. It's things like that. I have kids who will want to wear headphones when they take a test because they just don't want to hear anything. And I'm like, hey, you grab your headphones, you go take that test over there. As if it's helping you learn, and it's helping you feel safe in your environment, go for it. So just having accommodations like that, maybe a little more one-on-one support with a specific child, but still having the same expectations for all.
I love it. So the belief and the strategies that you use definitely ripple throughout the building. So how do you help teachers around you how do you guide them to do the things that you're doing to make every kid successful? Like, what does that look like in your building? Because I know it does, because I'm in your building with my kids.
Yes. Well, one thing I will say about our building is, like, when I go to meetings in the morning, I'm on the Lighthouse team, and they never say your students. It's always our students. And I feel like that is kind of lived throughout my school. Those kids are our kids, and so it's just making for sure that everyone we really, really promote relationships and culture in the classroom. We even started morning meeting, which has been a great time where the kids, it's just like community time for the kids. We have team building stuff, we have social and emotional learning activities, and it has been it has benefited them so much because they are so much more aware of their emotions and other people's emotions. And I think it's just breeding the community we need for everyone. I just feel like that's really helped with that belief in our
just
school.
Like the culture
yes.
is all that.
It's all that.
And if you don't follow that, then you're going to stand out. So you want to follow that, right?
It is. It's big. It's big. Yes. And I mean, because my child goes there, went there as well. Now they're going. Right. But it's lovely, and it's lived by everyone.
Pretty much the whole building.
Yeah.
I mean, I've had 3 kids at that building, and it's definitely lived through that building.
Oh,
go ahead.
No, something else about that?
No.
Okay. Well, I wanted to ask the next question is, how do you take a flexible approach to using support staff in your classroom?
Well, I'm going to start with I've had different opportunities with different support staff and paras and faculty in my room, and I will say I think the biggest thing is still almost with my students, anybody that comes to my room, that it's like a safe environment. So I think having trust and communication is key, and talking over the IEP too, so and talking with that faculty member, talking with the para to make for sure we know what to expect from each other, because it's not always the same. Sometimes I will have a para come in who will be helping the child throughout the entire lesson, kind of shadowing the child around. Sometimes they kind of sit back and they let the child do their own thing, and then they'll step in when they need to. So it's kind of knowing what each child needs because it's different. Sometimes I've had a para come in, and it's during small group time. The kid's back there working with me. The para's over there reading with some other students in my classroom. And so it's just being flexible like that. But I think communication is key, and making for sure they're part of your classroom community as well.
And I think that's huge because you pulled the student that they're working one-on-one with to do one-on-ones. And they, instead of not engaging, they took the opportunity to engage with someone else. And I think that's huge because that creates a culture of everyone is important in this room, and that this staff isn't just for this person, right? And there's a big misconception of that. And it can go both ways. It can go with the staff that's in your room saying, well, I'm only here for that kiddo. And it can go for the teacher, reg ed teacher, saying you're only here for that kiddo. But what creates the culture, right, is everyone working with everyone. So I love that. That's that's what it should look like, right?
And I definitely think that communication is key, and making for sure that they feel welcomed. I had a student that would be in for like 30 minutes a day, and I always do cupcakes at the end of the day for birthday treats. And my kids are like, we can't do it at the end of the day anymore. And I'm like, you're right, we can't. But there was one day that we had to do it at the end of the day because they wanted to make for sure the other student received the birthday cupcake because they are part of our classroom. And they went all the way down that hallway and made for sure that the student and the para received their cupcake because they're a part of our...
They're a part. You told me a story whenever we were talking earlier about you being absent and having a student come in, and I think everyone should hear this story. So will you repeat your story?
I had a student in a wheelchair who would come into my room for about 30 minutes during phonics, and my classroom was kind of small, and sometimes the kids would get a little wonky with their desk, and we would always straighten him out, or I would normally straighten him out to make for sure that he could move around the classroom. Well, I had a sub, and they were freaking out because they were afraid that he wasn't going to be able to get around the room. And she's like, it was beautiful to see these first graders like rearranging the desk just to make for sure that their friend could get around the classroom.
That's awesome.
So
that's huge because you've created the culture, right?
Yes.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
I think I keep saying that, but that's what it takes. Like that's what inclusion is. It's culture, right? Like it's creating this belief that everyone is equal, everyone fits in, everyone's part of something, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
That's so awesome.
This is making me just think back. I think there wasn't many people with differing abilities growing up in my classroom, and if they were probably taken out to a separate classroom most of the day. We didn't see a lot of them, but I remember there was one boy in my class, and I believe he had autism, but he would have a para, and it's like none of the students knew him or knew the para. They would just come in and sit in the corner, and they would do their own thing, and then he'd leave and go back to his other classroom. And that's what it looked like for my classroom growing up. And that's the only memory I can even think of remembering of a para coming in and helping out in any capacity. So just think of that and then compare it to that. How different would it be for anyone that's my age growing up with people that have disabilities of any kind? Oh my goodness, the compassion that I'm sure all of your students are gaining, and empathy, and being just aware of other people's needs and how they can help them.
Well, and it becomes a norm, right?
Capacity.
Instead of the abnormal, right? It becomes the norm, and then it's just like, let's do this, let's roll, right?
Yeah.
It's so much better.
It's so good.
Something that you're really, really great at is making sure that learning for each student is meeting their needs, right? And so, like, you differentiate for the kids, you meet them where they're at. You don't provide one lesson and say, good luck, I know you're on this level or you're on this level because we're working on this level. You differentiate. If you have a high student, you make sure that they're challenged. If you have a student that needs supports, you make sure that they're challenged, but they're growing. How do you go about doing that? And I know that, like, you look at IEPs and you feel that that's important, but can you tell us why, A, you feel it's important, but B, like, how do you go about doing that?
Well, I was telling you earlier, I have two very different children. One who is, just started reading at 4, like never had to. She just kind of picked it all up. She watched Letter Factory a lot as a child in the car, and when we drive back to Tipton, and I swear, I'm like, she learned to read from Letter Factory. And then my son needs a little more support, and so I truly keep all my kids in my mind as how I would want my children treated. And I am going to help all my students grow regardless of what level they are on. So I will use what I'm teaching, but try to make it more challenging, even having some of the students who are excelling in it helping others, because that's a whole nother skill that can be very challenging. And then just making for sure that the students who need more support, like as I'm watching them, like, okay, we're going to grab manipulatives. Okay, we're going to go, when we start small group, we're going back to my table and we're going to do this again. Watch as I'm watching them, making for sure that I'm starting to differentiate while I'm teaching, because sometimes you don't always know. Like, you're like, oh, this should be good, this should be fine. And then you're like, oh, we're going to have to start doing some more. And sometimes it's the whole class and you're like, oh, I'm going to have to start doing something different because I'm, so it's kind of being flexible and being aware of your students. And it's also knowing them, knowing kind of how they tick. So you can say, like, you can be like, oh, they're starting to get frustrated right now because this is getting really hard. I'm going to have to let them take a break for a moment. So that could also be an accommodation, or like, because some things can be difficult. So it's just knowing your kids and being able to help them and not just let them sit there and struggle.
Right, because often it's not about the content as much as it is about the environment. It's if they're working up and you're pushing, right, then the explosion happens.
Yes.
And you don't want that. And so sometimes it's like, we can learn this content, but we might need to learn it in steps. Or in a quieter environment or all of that. And you were talking about how, like, you sat on the teacher side of IEP meetings earlier, and then you had the opportunity to sit on the parent side. And can you talk a little bit about what that looks like? Because you know what accommodations, like, they need and how to implement them in your classroom, but you were on the flip side of it, and that was pretty impactful for you.
Yes. So last year, well, that wasn't last year anymore. I guess it was third grade. But my son was diagnosed with ADHD. And then I waited until it started to impact his learning because I kind of had already anticipated. But I was like, it's not impacting your learning. It's not impacting your learning. And then whenever I kind of, third grade came, third grade's rough. Like it's a hard year. It's a lot of new concepts. And so last year in fourth grade, he started receiving a speech. We wanted him to receive speech. He started doing RTI for speech, and he ended up qualifying for more than speech in his IEP. And I have been to numerous IEP meetings. I have accommodated so many different children, and it's what I do, and I've always tried to be like super supportive in the meetings and then all of a sudden I'm now that parent. And even though we have the most amazing teachers, I've worked with these people forever. They're phenomenal, but it was just like the unknown, like just not knowing. And it was just like anxiety, and it was just being on the other side. And I am a teacher. I know that it's going to be amazing, but I still had those emotions going in to the meeting. But then leaving the meeting, it was like the weight just lifted off my shoulders. There were so many people that had his back. And like, I know how to accommodate for younger children, but I have somebody in there like, no, he's going to need this down the road. He's going to need this. He's going to need this. Things that I wouldn't even know how to advocate for.
Right.
And so I left the meeting feeling like so relieved. And they went above and beyond. It was like they did better than I could ever do.
Wow.
And so, I just want everybody to feel that way when they leave.
Will that impact how you are as the teacher?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I already thought that like I was being empathetic and I was being like, and now I'm like, I want you to know that we got this and we are going to do everything in our power
to make it work. Yeah.
And, it's because it's also, thank goodness for public education, because that is the fact that there's a team of people right there for my kid is
huge.
Amazing.
Yeah, that is very huge.
Something you said at the end of that was that you want to let them know that we are on your team and we will make this work. To the family, what does that good communication between home and school look like in your experience, especially after the IEPs and what you've experienced? How do you communicate with families differently, maybe?
I definitely try from the beginning to have a positive phone call, kind of get to know you, build a relationship. And I do think that communication throughout the year is key from all of the teachers involved. And with that, I also think that collaborating with all the teachers is huge. So on a side note from this, whenever I am working with a student who has an IEP, when I talk to their resource teacher, you can help that child so much more when you collaborate together. And so that's huge. And I think also communicating together to parents and things is really big. And I think that you don't want to give, honestly, I don't think there's really too much communication. I think the more communication, the better.
Yeah.
Right. And I think it's really important for our kiddos, especially our kiddos that don't have as many regular ed minutes, they have more special ed minutes, to hear from the reg ed teacher that their student is being successful is so much more meaningful, because they hear from their special ed teacher all the time. I talk to my parents every day, right?
Yes.
But to hear from hey, in this environment, in this regular ed environment where they're being included, they're being successful, that's huge, right? That is a celebration that our families will jump up and down for, because oftentimes it's, well, I saw this behavior, or this happened, or, so when you have those positive moments, it's great.
And I think that's huge too, because sometimes there can be tough conversations you have to have. So I like to always start with the positive and then be sure that there's more positive, because there is a ton of positive, but the bad thing is we don't always communicate the positive.
No.
Right? So
Well, thank you so much for being on today. And inclusion, something we wrote is inclusion isn't just a strategy, that it is a mindset.
Mm-hmm.
And it, like you said earlier, it is a culture. So it starts with believing that every child can learn and thrive when given the right support, the right environment, and people who believe in them. So thank you so much for facilitating that in your classroom. And I'm sure you've made such a huge impact on your school too.
She has.
Like, I wish I went to that school.
This whole time I'm like, it's pretty amazing.
Should I have had an IEP?
The whole culture.
I need that
of the school is
support.
good, yeah.
Wait.
Right.
So that is so amazing. So cool. Well, something that we put at the end of each podcast is what's 30 seconds of a takeaway or something you wanted to share with parents or educators that you just got from this. Mm-hmm.
I just think having a strong culture and relationship in your classroom is huge.
Mm-hmm.
If they feel safe in your classroom, I think that it will go a long, long way.
Mm-hmm.
So that's probably my biggest takeaway.
I think,
So
I mean,
awesome.
yeah. You got all of your students involved, and I think that's the important piece of that.
Because
you
because they
created a
just
culture.
build. It just comes naturally whenever it's like that.
I love that.
Wow. Well, thank you again, Brittany, for joining us and sharing your wisdom. And if you found this helpful, please share this with your friends and family. And we will see you guys all next month.
Thank you. Bye.
If you would like to learn more about Upside Down Mercantile, you can go to shopupsidedown.com or visit us on Commercial Street in Springfield, Missouri. If you have a topic you'd like to know more about, you can email them to info@dsgo.life.